welcome back to my channel. This week I had to make a too fast theme cake for Rami. Obviously he's turning 2. So the client wanted some pictures of racing cars along with some buntings and a speed limit sign. So I printed them onto a white icing sheet and traced them onto pieces of white fondant. I got 2 racing car pictures from the internet. One had the number 2 inside the little circle, and the other one was blank, which I later drew the letter R on for Rami. Here I had these wheel silicone molds in different sizes, so I made 3 black tires. For the speed limit number 2 sign, I attached it onto a piece of fondant with a stick at the back so it could stand up on one of the tires. Next, I used this blue fondant which the client requested, and it matched the blue shades of the edible image perfectly. So I wrapped some plastic balls with some blue fondant so everything would match nicely. Then I had these racing flag buntings, which I also printed on icing sheet. I attached them onto white fondant and cut them one by one later on. I also made sure to wrap the stems of the plastic balls with floral tape because I didn't want the wires touching the cake, just to keep everything food safe. Next, I prepared 6 layers of vanilla butter cake filled with white chocolate ganache. Once I covered all 6 layers with buttercream during the crumb coat process, I chilled the cake in the fridge. Then I rolled out some black fondant to the thickness I wanted, and using square cutters, I made plenty of little squares. I had to make sure I had enough for the whole cake, which actually ended up being way too many in the end. I also repeated the same process with white fondant squares. Once the cake was chilled, I applied the final layer of white buttercream and made sure the sides and top were nice and smooth. I lined up all the black and white fondant squares onto a piece of parchment paper, which I lightly smeared with shortening so the squares would stick. I used this method to apply the racing flag border around the cake. This was definitely the easiest and neatest way to apply the checkered pattern. You could also do it one by one, but I found this method much easier and faster. I rolled out the same blue fondant and roughly tore the top edge so it looked like hills or landscape shapes, I guess. Then I applied it above the racing border. Next, I added the edible images of the racing cars in the middle, along with the custom name. I also used chocolate ganache to attach the tire and the speed limit number 2 sign onto the board. Then I added the plastic balls in 3 different colors: light blue, darker blue, and white. I also placed the racing flags on top, along with the second racing car edible image and another tire at the bottom. Now I decided to use another 2-fast cake topper and placed it on the side on top of another tire. Then I added the buntings or the flags alternately with blue and racing flag designs, which I had made earlier. I also attached a few more racing flags behind the cake and on the side using white chocolate ganache. Finally, I added 2 candles for the birthday boy. I had so much fun making this cake, so I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and found it useful. Please like and subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.